Hey guys, OgreBarberian here, back for another in-depth look. This time we're going to look at Wonder Woman, Princess of Themyscira. And this is the Wonder Woman that you can farm in campaign mode. She has one node in Chapter 3. And that is it. But it does allow you to farm her, so that's a plus. She has a physical tank gear set, which means she gains a lot of HP and a lot of stamina and not a whole lot of speed. She does get like 23 speed at the end of it. She ends up like at 103. But then she also has ways in her kit to kind of bypass that. So let's go ahead and take a look. Her basic attack, Amazon Strike. Damage to enemy, 40% chance to purge one debuff from Wonder Woman. And this does go up to 100%, so she will purge herself constantly, which is nice. And then the upgrade for this is purge one debuff on each ally if Wonder Woman has no debuffs. Nifty, right? I think so, because that's pretty much what her kit is built around, is keeping her allies clear of debuffs and her enemies clear of buffs. And then we have Power of Truth. Purge 8 up to 10 debuffs from self. 9 debuffs from herself, and up to 4 debuffs from allies, and grant up to 10% turn meter to all allies. That's pretty nifty, I think. Purging a bunch of debuffs and then granting some turn meter is always a plus. So, and then the upgrade for this, apply a debuff immunity to all allies. And this does include herself. And debuff immunity is very, very powerful, especially when you're facing off against like a bleed team or stun team or anything like that has a lot of debuffs. Speed down teams, Clayface, Harley Quinn with her intelligence downs. Lots and lots of characters that have lots and lots of debuffs running around. So very powerful ability. And then we have Fury of Zeus. Heavy damage and purge up to 5 buffs from the enemy. And then the legendary upgrade for this is apply buff immunity to the enemy. Now, do not underestimate the power of buff immunity thrown on an enemy, because there are a ton of characters that rely on their buffs. Etrigan, Power Girl, Cyborg, Deathstroke, just the list goes on, trust me. So very, very powerful ability. Very powerful. I highly recommend this first, Power of Truth second, and then the other ones get a little gray, but we'll talk about that here in a second. And then we have Bracelets of Reflection as her passive ability. When taking damage, transfer debuffs on Wonder Woman to random enemies. And this does go up in the chance here. 20% chance to transfer additional debuffs. So it does transfer up to 2 debuffs at a time. If no debuffs, also apply silence. So this is actually really cool, because if the attack that hits her applies debuffs, it'll actually transfer those off of her. And if it doesn't apply anything, they'll just get silenced. Very, very powerful. The legendary upgrade for this is 20% chance to use Amazon Strike on the attacker. So it's a counterattack. 20% chance to counterattack whenever she gets attacked. That's pretty powerful, I think. Which, her counterattack also removes debuffs from herself. She's not going to have squat for debuffs. It's very, very hard to debuff Wonder Woman. There are ways to do it. Basically, you have to deal no damage when you debuff her. And that's the only way that she'll retain those debuffs. So, like a Killer Frost hits her with her stun and speed downs. Didn't apply any damage, so she'll keep those up until she takes damage, and then they'll just transfer off randomly. Which is great when you're facing off against like a Bane or something like that, who goes to try and stun you, and then hits you, stuns you, but then he hits you, so you transfer it right back off onto somebody on their team. So he literally just stunned one of his teammates. It's really hilarious when you see that kind of stuff happen. So, very powerful ability. And then we have her leadership ability, Finest of the Amazons. At the end of turn, and it does go up to 100%, Chance to use Fury of Zeus if no allies have a debuff, or Power of Truth if all allies have a debuff. So this is the tricky part, because you have to use her Power of Truth, Amazon Strike, and Fury of Zeus sparingly initially, just until you figure out how the opponent is working. You use Power of Truth early if you have the debuff immunity, and then you're going to be constantly proccing Fury of Zeus. If you know that your opponent has an AoE debuff move, feel free to use whatever you want, because Power of Truth will proc as soon as it becomes Wonder Woman's turn. You know, I mean, there's a lot of ways to use and abuse this leadership ability. It's very, very powerful. And Fury of Zeus does pretty respectable damage overall. And, you know, applying buff immunity is very, very powerful. So, very, very strong leader. And she's tanky as heck. And the legendary upgrade for this, she gets plus 60% agility and plus 15% speed. That is insane. She's the only character like this who gains additional speed. So she may start out at 103 speed, but with this upgrade, that 15% additional speed puts her at like 118 or something. 119, somewhere in that range. She gets really fast, surprisingly, for a tank. So she gets really annoying really quickly. At really high legendaries, she can be an absolute monster to fight. So, speaking of legendary order, I highly recommend Power of Truth and Fury of Zeus early as your first two. After that, like I said, it gets kind of gray. It really depends on how you use her, and as you're using her, what you decide that you think you want to use. I do think Finest of the Amazons is pretty powerful. It does make her a lot more tanky against physical attacks, and also gives her that extra speed, which is powerful. The counterattack is really powerful, especially if you have the upgrade on Amazon Strike. So she's one of those few characters who's very, very highly worth Legendary 5. So let's go ahead and take a look at some team comps as I continue to ramble about just how amazing she actually is. So this one, we've got Wonder Woman, Swamp Thing, Bane, and Poison Ivy. And this one, the idea being, Bane and Wonder Woman, both very, very tanky. And with Swamp Thing, both very, very sustainable. So Poison Ivy can put a taunt on either of them and not worry too much. You probably want to put it on Bane because he's a little slower than Wonder Woman. He's also just a touch slower than Poison Ivy. So that'll allow her taunt to come back and then be able to put it on. So, and then, of course, Swamp Thing throwing out his basic great overheals and mends to the team will help enable Bane for his free attacks. And there's going to be debuffs everywhere with Bane because of Bane. So lots of shenanigans to be had with this one. Good, solid overall team comp, I think. And then we've got this one that I put together that I think is rather fun, is my anti-evasion team, as I like to call it. We've got Wonder Woman, Killer Croc, Dr. Fate, and Steppenwolf. So this one, Dr. Fate and Steppenwolf both apply hit chance ups. This is also your anti-taunt team because Killer Croc cares about whether or not they're taunting, but if they hit him, he'll give them a taunt. So, very powerful. And then he'll be able to purge a bunch of buffs as well. So, lots of fun shenanigans to be had here. And then Dr. Fate, because of Wonder Woman's buff immunity and Killer Croc's buff immunity, he'll be proccing his passive a lot to do extra attacks because they have an immunity. So, pretty powerful overall team, I think. And then Steppenwolf, anytime somebody crits, he's going to get 10 meter and stuff. So, it's pretty powerful, I think. And then Killer Croc can also gain crit chance ups. And then Steppenwolf obviously can grant the entire team crit chance ups. So there's just craziness flying all over the place. Steppenwolf and Wonder Woman both very tanky. Dr. Fate applying those shields to everybody. Killer Croc can be, invisible. Can also be very tanky because of one of his legendary upgrades that give him 12% true heal. So I think it's a very powerful team overall. And then the last one I've got, this is just the funsy shenanigan team. But this is the one that's going to have attacks proccing all over the place. You're going to have Wonder Woman flying all over the place using her Fury of Zeus constantly. Or her, turn meter up and team buff. Debuff purging, rather. And then you have Castaway Green Arrow, who's going to go invisible, turn meter down the opponent. He's got buff purging on his attacks, his basic attacks. We got Flash. As long as he gets 3 speed ups, he's got his 1 speed locked in and his he's launching free attacks all over the place too. And then Silver Banshee, every time that Castaway Green Arrow or Wonder Woman use an attack that purges a buff, she's going to be firing off her AoE. Like, there's a lot of shenanigans to be had, and there's going to be a lot of extra attacks. So, good, solid overall team, I think. And that's all I got for you for today. As always, leave a comment, like and subscribe. Enjoy and grind on.